My stream is never late, nor is it early. It begins precisely when I mean for it to. Mostly because James is in chat, gassing me up, making me feel so good, saying, just discovered your channel a few days ago. Great stuff. Funny and thought provoking. The queer reading essay is excellent. Thank you, my dude. I really appreciate that. I take that directly to heart. That first one I did, Respect the Lore, was built off the back of a paper I wrote and presented at a conference at Glasgow University, and got out of hand. So now I have a YouTube channel. But yeah, it takes me forever to make long form videos. What's up, Ron? We're going to be delving today. It takes me forever to make long form videos because I am gainfully employed. I have a full-time job. And I also have like a dog and a house and all of this to like, I'm a grown up. It's very unfortunate. But I am very, very close to finishing the script for my upcoming one of two Merry and Pippin videos. Mary's first, then Pippin. So I'm getting those. And then I have some other kind of like, did you know that Tolkien responded to some folks trying to adapt Lord of the Rings into a movie, and he gives direct notes on the treatment and hated it? Ooh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Entwives. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to get into. And yeah, I've been kind of taking a step back from deeply researching the fandom on the internet, mostly because I'm off of Twitter now, and I don't really like check that app anymore. I mostly get served up subreddits that are like concerned with Lord of the Rings content. And I do have a video in me about the stupid ass questions people ask on Reddit. I'm not here to shame anybody, but like, come on, y'all, pick up the book. Let's go. I also have more Brainworms videos. I need to do another one about Fellowship because I missed like half of them. I was honestly just trying to crank something out over Christmas and remember how to do video editing. And then I have ones for Two Towers and Return of the King and Me as well. Essentially, all of this is to say, I cannot wait to like make more stuff. I want to make more stuff all the time, but I do have that dog in me that wants me to thoroughly research everything and fact check everything. And I still get stuff wrong all the time. So we'll get there. But thank you again for your very kind words as I kill a bug on my desk. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you watching because I make videos for me. Like I make videos for the type of content that I enjoy, which is long form stuff I can have on in the background while I do other things. So I'm glad to hear it resonates with other people. But today we're here to cross the Bridge of Khazad-Dûm, Fellowship of the Ring, Book 2, Chapter 5. And we're just going to get right into it. You'll notice Gandalf made an appearance last week and not this week. And I do have the staff and blade just out of frame in case I'm feeling brave when we get to the part that we're going to get to today. So, without further ado, let's get going on Fellowship of the Ring, Book 2, Chapter 5, The Bridge of Khazad-Dûm. The Company of the Ring stood silent beside the tomb of Balin. Frodo thought of Bilbo and his long friendship with the dwarf, and of Balin's visit to the Shire long ago. In that dusty chamber in the mountains, it seemed 1,000 years ago, and on the other side of the world. At length they stirred and looked up, and began to search for anything that would give them tidings of Balin's fate, or show what had become of his folk. There was another smaller door on the other side of the chamber, under the shaft. By both the doors they could see now that many bones were lying, and among them were broken swords and axe heads, and cloven shields and helms. Some of the swords were crooked, orc scimitars with blackened blades. There were many recesses cut in the rock of the walls, and in them were large iron-bound chests of wood. All had been broken and plundered, but beside the shattered lid of one there lay the remains of a book. It had been slashed and stabbed and partly burned, and it was so stained with black and other dark marks like old blood that little of it could be read. Gandalf lifted it carefully, but the leaves crackled and broke as he laid it out on the slab. He pored over it for some time without speaking. Frodo and Gimli, standing at his side, could see, as he gingerly turned the leaves, that they were written by many different hands, in runes both of Moria and of Dale, and here and there in Elvish script. At last, Gandalf looked up. "It seems to be a record of the fortunes of Balin's folk," he said. "I guess that it began with their coming to Dimrill Dale nigh on 30 years ago. The pages seem to have numbers referring to the years after their arrival. The top page is marked 1, 3, so at least 2 are missing from the beginning. Listen to this. We drove out orcs from the Great Gate and Guard. I think. The next word is blurred and burned, probably room. We slew many in the bright, I think, sun in the dale. Floe was killed by an arrow. He slew the great. Then there is a blur, followed by Floe under grass near Mirrormere. The next line or two I cannot read. Then comes, we have taken the 21st hall of North End to dwell in. There is, I cannot read what. A shaft is mentioned. Then Balin has set up his seat in the chamber of Mazarbul. The chamber of records, said Gimli. I guess that is where we now stand. Well, I can read no more for a long way, said Gandalf, except the word gold and Durin's axe and something helm. Then Balin is now Lord of Moria. That seems to end a chapter. After some stars and another hand begins, and I can see we found true silver, and later the word well forged, and then something. I have it, Mithril, and the last 2 lines, owing to seek for the upper armories of Third Deep, something go westwards, a blur, to Holland Gate. Really quick here. I like very much the first-hand experience of trying to translate an ancient text. You know, that was Tolkien's whole deal. That was what he spent so much time doing. And he was like, let me apply my skill set to my fantasy text right here. I love it. So good. Gandalf paused and set a few leaves aside. There are several pages of the same sort, rather hastily written and much damaged, he said, but I can make little of them in this light. Now there must be a number of leaves missing, because they begin to be numbered 5, the 5th year of the colony, I suppose. Let me see. No, they are too cut and stained. I cannot read them. We might do better in the sunlight. Oh, wait, here's something. A large, bold hand using an Elvish script. That would be Ori's hand, said Gimli, looking over the wizard's arm. He could write well and speedily, and often use the Elvish characters. I fear he had ill tidings to record in a fair hand, said Gandalf. The first clear word is sorrow, but the rest of the line is lost unless it ends in estra. Yes, it must be Yestra, followed by day being the 10th of November, Balin, Lord of Moria, fell in Dimrill Dale. He went alone to look in Mirrormere. An orc shot him from behind a stone. We slew the orc, but many more up from east, up the Silver Lode. The remainder of the page is so blurred that I can hardly make anything out, but I think I can read, we have barred the gates, and then can hold them long if, and then perhaps horrible, and suffer. Poor Balin. He seems to have kept the title that he took for less than 5 years. I wonder what happened afterwards, but there is no time to puzzle out the last few pages. Here is the last page of all. He paused and sighed. It is grim reading, he said. I fear their end was cruel. Listen. We cannot get out. We cannot get out. They have taken the bridge and second hall. Frar and Loni and Nali fell there. Then there are 4 lines smeared so that I can only read, went 5 days ago. The last lines run, the pool is up to the wall at Westgate. The watcher in the water took Owen. We cannot get out. The end comes. And then drums, drums in the deep. I wonder what that means. The last thing written is in a trailing scrawl of elf letters. They are coming. There is nothing more. Gandalf paused and stood in silent thought. So in the movie, they show this book, and on the last page, it's like, they are coming, and it like scrawls off the page. And it does tickle me to think that, there's like an onslaught of orcs attacking them. And Ori is like like writing madly, being like, drums in the deep, they're coming, we cannot get out. Like he has to document, he has to do it. I appreciate it. It's always like, I know it's very grim and sad, but that has always kind of made me chuckle a little bit. Like he's writing until he gets like shot or something. I don't know. Tickles me. A sudden dread and a horror of the chamber fell on the company. We cannot get out, muttered Gimli. It was well for us that the pool had sunk a little, and that the watcher was sleeping down at the southern end. Gandalf raised his head and looked round. They seem to have made a last stand by both doors, he said, but there were not many left by that time. So ended the attempt to retake Moria. It was valiant, but foolish. The time has not come yet. Now, I fear, we must say farewell to Balin, son of Fundin. Here he must lie in the halls of his fathers. We will take this book, the Book of Mazarbul, and look at it more closely later. You'd better keep it, Gimli, and take it back to Dain if you get a chance. It will interest him, though it will grieve him deeply. Come, let us go. The morning is passing. Which way shall we go? Asked Boromir. Back to the hall, answered Gandalf, but our visit to this room has not been in vain. I know now where we are. This must be, as Gimli says, the chamber of Mazarbul, and the hall must be the 21st of the north end. Therefore, we should leave by the eastern arch of the hall and bear right and south and go downwards. The 21st hall should be on the 7th level, that is 6 above the level of the gates. Come now, back to the hall. Sorry, there's a fly in here. I don't know if y'all can hear it, but it's really annoying me. So if I get up and try to let the fly out halfway through, that'll be why, because I cannot stand it. Gandalf had hardly spoken these words when there came a great noise, a rolling boom that seemed to come from the depths far below and to tremble in the stone at their feet. They sprang towards the door in alarm. Doom, doom, it rolled again, as if huge hands were turning the very caverns of Moria into a vast drum. Then there came an echoing blast. A great horn was blown in the hall, and answering horns and harsh cries were heard further off. There was a hurrying sound of many feet. "They are coming," cried Legolas. "We cannot get out," said Gimli. "Trapped!" cried Gandalf. "Why did I delay? Here we are, caught just as they were before. But I was not here then. We will see what—" Doom, doom, came the drumbeat, and the walls shook. "Slam the doors and wedge them," shouted Aragorn, "and keep your packs on as long as you can. We may get a chance to cut our way out yet." "No," said Gandalf, "we must not get shut in. Keep the east door ajar. We will go that way if we get a chance." Another harsh horn call and shrill cries rang out. Feet were coming down the corridor. There was a ring and clatter as the company drew their swords. Glamdring shone with a pale light, and Sting glinted at the edges. Boromir set his shoulder against the western door. "Wait a moment. Do not close it yet," said Gandalf. He sprang forward to Boromir's side and drew himself up to his full height. "Who comes hither to disturb the rest of Balin, Lord of Moria?" he cried in a loud voice. There was a rush of hoarse laughter, like the fall of sliding stones into a pit. Amid the clamor, a deep voice was raised in command. Doom, boom, doom, went the drums in the deep. With a quick movement, Gandalf stepped before the narrow opening of the door and thrust forward his staff. There was a dazzling flash that lit the chamber and the passage outside. For an instant, the wizard looked out. Arrows whined and whistled down the corridor as he sprang back. "There are orcs, very many of them," he said, "and some are large and evil, black uruks of Mordor. For the moment they are hanging back, but there is something else there. A great cave troll, I think, or more than one. There is no hope of escape that way." "And no hope at all if they come at the other door as well," said Boromir. "There is no sound outside here yet," said Aragorn, who was standing by the eastern door, listening. "The passage on this side plunges straight down a stair. It plainly does not lead back towards the hall, but it is no good flying blindly this way with the pursuit just behind. We cannot block the door. Its key is gone and the lock is broken, and it opens inwards. We must do something to delay the enemy first. We will make them fear the chamber of Mazarbul," he said grimly, feeling the edge of his sword Andúril. Heavy feet were heard in the corridor. Boromir flung himself against the door and heaved it to. Then he wedged it with broken sword blades and splinters of wood. The company retreated to the other side of the chamber. But they had no chance to fly yet. There was a blow on the door that made it quiver, and then it began to grind slowly open, driving back the wedges. A huge arm and shoulder with a dark skin of greenish scales was thrust through the widening gap. Then a great, flat, toeless foot was forced through below. There was a dead silence outside. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. She is scared of the train, and she's a giant baby. Boromir leaped forward and hewed at the arm with all his might, but his sword rang, glanced aside, and fell from his shaken hand. The blade was notched. Suddenly, and to his own surprise, Frodo felt a hot wrath blaze up in his heart. "The Shire!" he cried, and springing beside Boromir, he stooped and stabbed with sting at the hideous foot. There was a bellow, and the foot jerked back, nearly wrenching sting from Frodo's arm. Black drops dripped from the blade and smoked on the floor. Boromir hurled himself against the door and slammed it again. "One for the Shire!" cried Aragorn. "The hobbit's bite is deep. You have a good blade, Frodo, son of Drogo." There was a crash on the door, followed by a crash after crash. Rams and hammers were beating against it. It cracked and staggered back, and the opening drew suddenly wide. Arrows came whistling in, but struck the northern wall and fell harmlessly to the floor. There was a horn blast and a rush of feet, and orcs one after another leaped into the chamber. How many there were, the company could not count. The affray was sharp, but the orcs were dismayed by the fierceness of the defense. Legolas shot two through the throat. Gimli hewed the legs from under another that had sprung up on Balin's tomb. Boromir and Aragorn slew many. When 13 had fallen, the rest fled shrieking, leaving the defenders unharmed, except for Sam, who had a scratch along the scalp. A quick duck had saved him, and he had felled his orc, a sturdy thrust with his barrow blade. A fire was smoldering in his brown eyes that would have made Ted Sandyman step backwards if he'd seen it. "Now is the time," cried Gandalf. "Let us go before the troll returns." But even as they retreated, and before Pippin and Merry had reached the stair outside, a huge orc chieftain, almost man-high, clad in black mail from head to foot, leaped into the chamber. Behind him, his followers clustered in the doorway. His His broad, flat face was swart, his eyes were like coals, and his tongue was red. He wielded a great spear. With a thrust of his huge hide shield, he turned Boromir's sword and drove him backwards, throwing him to the ground. Diving under Aragorn's blow with the speed of a striking snake, he charged into the company and thrust with his spear straight at Frodo. The blow caught him on the right side, and Frodo was hurled against the wall and pinned. Sam, with a cry, hacked at the spear shaft, and it broke. But even as the orc flung down the truncheon and swept out his scimitar, Andúril came down upon his helm. There was a flash like flame, and the helm burst asunder. The orc fell with cloven head. His followers fled howling as Boromir and Aragorn sprang at them. "Doom, doom," went the drums in the deep. The great voice rolled out again. "Now," shouted Gandalf, "now is the last chance. Run for it." Can I just really quick highlight? But even as the orc flung down the truncheon and swept out his scimitar, and Andúril came down upon his helm, there was a flash like flame, and the helm burst asunder. The orc fell with cloven head. That's like 10-point vocab words in there. Scimitar, burst asunder, cloven head. All very nice, satisfying words that I enjoy to read and speak. Good mouthfeel. Fucking, ooh. Nobody does it or did it like Tolkien, honestly. Like, ooh. Riven from the bones of the earth, dog. Ooh, bars. Fucking, ooh, hotter than the sun. So good. Aragorn picked up Frodo where he lay by the wall and made for the stair, pushing Merry and Pippin in front of him. The others followed, but Gimli had to be dragged away by Legolas. In spite of the peril, he lingered by Balin's tomb with his head bowed. Boromir hauled the eastern door to, grinding upon its hinges. It had great iron rings on either side, but could not be fastened. "I'm all right," gasped Frodo. "I can walk. Put me down." Aragorn nearly dropped him in his amazement. "I thought you were dead," he cried. Not yet, said Gandalf, but there is no time for wonder. Off you go, all of you, down the stairs. Wait a few minutes for me at the bottom, but if I do not come soon, go on, go quickly, and choose paths leading right and downwards. We cannot leave you to hold the door alone, said Aragorn. Do as I say, said Gandalf fiercely. Swords are no more use here. Go. Let me take that again. Do as I say, said Gandalf fiercely. Swords are no more use here. Go. The passage was lit by no shaft and was utterly dark. They groped their way down a long flight of steps and then looked back, but they could see nothing except high above them the faint glimmer of the wizard's staff. He seemed to be still standing on guard by the closed door. Frodo breathed heavily and leaned against Sam, who put his arms around him. They stood peering up the stairs into the darkness. Frodo thought he could hear the voice of Gandalf above, muttering words that ran down the sloping roof with a sighing echo. He could not catch what was said. The walls seemed to be trembling. Every now and again the drum beats throbbed and rolled. Doom, doom. Suddenly at the top of the stair there was a stab of white light. Then there was a dull rumble and a heavy thud. The drum beats broke out wildly. Doom, boom, and then stopped. Frodo did not do anything. Gandalf came flying down the steps and fell to the ground in the midst of the company. Well, well, that's over, said the wizard, struggling to his feet. I have done all that I could, but I have met my match and have nearly been destroyed. But don't stand here. Go on. You will have to do without light for a while. I am rather shaken. Go on, go on. Where are you, Gimli? Come ahead with me. Keep close behind, all of you. They stumbled after him, wondering what had happened. Doom, doom went the drum beats again. They now sounded muffled and far away, but they were following. There was no other sound of pursuit, neither tramp of feet nor any voice. Gandalf took no turns right or left, for the passage seemed to be going in the direction that he desired. Every now and again it descended a flight of steps, 50 or more, to a lower level. At the moment, that was their chief danger, for in the dark they could not see a descent until they came on it and put their feet out into emptiness. Gandalf felt the ground with his staff like a blind man. At the end of an hour, they had gone a mile, or maybe a little more, and had descended many flights of stairs. There was still no sound of pursuit. Almost they began to hope that they would escape. At the bottom of the 7th flight, Gandalf halted. It is getting hot, he gasped. We ought to be down at least to the level of the gates now. Soon I think we should look for a left-hand turn to take us east. I hope it is not far. I am very weary. I must rest here a moment, even if all the orcs ever spawned are after us. Gimli took his arm and helped him down to a seat on the step. What happened away up there at the door? He asked. Did you meet the beater of the drums? I do not know, answered Gandalf. But I found myself suddenly faced by something that I have not met before. I could think of nothing to do but to try and put a shutting spell on the door. I know many, but to do things of that kind rightly requires time, and even then the door can be broken by strength. As I stood there, I could hear orc voices on the other side. At any moment, I thought they would burst it open. I could not hear what was said. They seemed to be talking in their own hideous language. All I caught was gosh, that is, fire. Then something came into the chamber. I felt it through the door, and the orcs themselves were afraid and fell silent. It laid hold of the iron ring, and then it perceived me and my spell. What it was, I cannot guess, but I have never felt such a challenge. The counterspell was terrible. It nearly broke me. For an instant, the door left my control and began to open. I had to speak a word of command. That proved too great a strain. The door burst in pieces. Something dark as a cloud was blocking out all the light inside, and I was thrown backwards down the stairs. All the wall gave way, and the roof of the chamber as well, I think. I am afraid Balin is buried deep, and maybe something else is buried there too. I cannot say, but at least the passage behind us was completely blocked. I have never felt so spent, but it is passing. And now what about you, Frodo? There was not time to say so, but I have never been more delighted in my life than when you spoke. I feared that it was a brave but dead hobbit that Aragorn was carrying. What about me? said Frodo. "I am alive and whole, I think. I am bruised and in pain, but it's not too bad." "Well," said Aragorn, "I can only say that hobbits are made of a stuff so tough that I've never met the like of it. Had I known, I would have spoken softer in the inn at Bree. That spear thrust would have skewered a wild boar." "Well, it did not skewer me, I'm glad to say," said Frodo, "though I feel as if I had been caught between a hammer and an anvil." He said no more. He found breathing painful. "You take after Bilbo," said Gandalf. "There is more about you than meets the eye, as I said of him long ago." Frodo wondered if the remark meant more than it said. Of course it fucking did, Frodo. Come on, it's Gandalf. Get on board. So, real quick, I find this description of the thing that Gandalf faces on the other side of the door to be wholly terrifying in the sense that Gandalf doesn't know what it is, but he knows it's a challenge to him. And he's like, I've never been so tired in my life. Like, Gandalf is not really one to admit when he's tired, even though he takes the form of an elderly man. But he's like, guys, I'm fucking bushed. Like, we have to get out of here because I cannot fight whatever the fuck that thing was. Like, he is making clear to the rest of the fellowship, like, this shit is beyond me. It's beyond any of us. I don't even know what it is, but we gotta go. And even though it's like very urgent and they need to keep moving, he's like, I do need to sit down for a few minutes, else I fear I shall die. Like, it's fucking crazy. They're getting tested like nobody's business. And then also, I do enjoy Aragorn being like, well, if I'd known that hobbits were essentially unkillable, I might have been nicer to you in Bree. When in Bree, they all talk about how you can't judge a book by its cover and appearances can be deceiving. Themes. Full circle. We're doing it. They now went on again. Before long, Gimli spoke. He had keen eyes in the dark. "I think," he said, "that there is a light ahead, but it is not daylight. It is red. What can it be?" "Gash," muttered Gandalf. I wonder if that is what they meant, that the lower levels are on fire. Still, we can only go on." Soon the light became unmistakable and could be seen by all. It was flickering and glowing on the walls away down the passage before them. They could now see their way. In front, the road sloped down swiftly, and some way ahead there stood a low archway, though through it the growing light came. The air became very hot. When they came to the arch, Gandalf went through, signing to them to wait. As he stood just beyond the opening, they saw his face lit by a red glow. Quickly, he stepped back. "There is some new devilry here," he said, "devised for our welcome, no doubt. But I know now where we are. We have reached the first deep, the level immediately below the gates. This is the second hall of Old Moria, and the gates are near, away beyond the eastern end, on the left, not more than a quarter of a mile. Across the bridge, up a broad stair, along a wide road, through the first hall, and out. But come and look." They peered out. Before them was another cavernous hall. It was loftier and far longer than the one in which they had slept. They were near its eastern end. Westward it ran away into darkness. Down the center stalked a double line of towering pillars. They were carved like boles of mighty trees whose boughs upheld the roof with a branching tracery of stone. Their stems were smooth and black, but a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. Right across the floor, close to the feet of two huge pillars, a great fissure had opened. Out of it, a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. Wisps of dark smoke wavered in the hot air. "If we had come by the main road down from the upper halls, we should have been trapped here," said Gandalf. "Let us hope that the fire now lies between us and pursuit. Come, there is no time to lose." Even as he spoke, they heard again the pursuing drumbeat. Doom, doom, doom. Away beyond the shadows at the western end of the hall, there came cries and horn calls. Doom, doom. The pillars seemed to tremble and the flames to quiver. "Now for the last race," said Gandalf. "If the sun is shining outside, we may still escape. After me." He turned left and sped across the smooth floor of the hall. The distance was greater than it had looked. As they ran, they heard the beat and echo of many hurrying feet behind. A shrill yell went up. They had been seen. There was a ring and a clash of steel. An arrow whistled over Frodo's head. Boromir laughed. They did not expect this, he said. The fire has cut them off. We are on the wrong side. Look ahead, said Gandalf. The bridge is near. It is dangerous and narrow. Suddenly, Frodo saw before him a black chasm. At the end of the hall, the floor vanished and fell to an unknown depth. The outer door could only be reached by a slender bridge of stone, without curb or rail, that spanned the chasm with one curving spring of 50 feet. It was an ancient defense of the dwarves against any enemy that might capture the first hall and the outer passages. They could only pass across it in single file. At the brink, Gandalf halted, and the others came up in a pack behind. Lead the way, Gimli, he said. Pippin and Merry next. Straight on, and up the stair beyond the door. Arrows fell among them. One struck Frodo and sprang back. Another pierced Gandalf's hat and stuck there like a black feather. Frodo looked behind. Beyond the fire, he saw swarming black figures. There seemed to be hundreds of orcs. They brandished spears and scimitars which shone red as blood in the firelight. Doom, doom, rolled the drum beats, growing louder and louder. Doom, doom. Legolas turned and set an arrow to the string, though it was a long shot for his small bow. He drew, but his hand fell and the arrow slipped to the ground. He gave a cry of dismay and fear. 2 great trolls appeared. They bore great slabs of stone and flung them down to serve as gangways over the fire. But it was not the trolls that had filled the elf with terror. The ranks of the orcs had opened, and they crowded away as if they themselves were afraid. Something was coming up behind them. What it was could not be seen. It was like a great shadow, in the middle of which was a dark form, of man shape maybe, yet greater, and a power and terror seemed to be in it, and to go before it. It came to the edge of the fire, and the light faded as if a cloud had bent over it. Then with a rush it leaped across the fissure. The flames roared up to greet it, and wreathed about it, and a black smoke swirled in the air. Its streaming mane kindled and blazed behind it. In its right hand was a blade like a stabbing tongue of fire. In its left it held a whip of many thongs. "Aye, aye!" wailed Legolas. A Balrog is come." Gimli stared with wide eyes. "Durin's bane," he cried, and letting his axe fall, he covered his face. "A Balrog," muttered Gandalf. "Now I understand." He faltered and leaned heavily on his staff. "What an evil fortune, and I am already weary." Yeah, it's not looking good. Does anyone have a stim pack for my boy? Oh my god. The dark figure, streaming with fire, raced towards them. The orcs yelled and poured over the stone gangways. Then Boromir raised his horn and blew. Loud the challenge rang and bellowed like the shout of many throats under the cavernous roof. For a moment, the orcs quailed and the fiery shadow halted. Then the echoes died as suddenly as a flame blown out by a dark wind, and the enemy advanced again. "Over the bridge!" cried Gandalf, recalling his strength. "Fly! This is a foe beyond any of you. I must hold the narrow way. Fly!" Aragorn and Boromir did not heed the command, but still held their ground, side by side, behind Gandalf at the far end of the bridge. The others halted just within the doorway at the hall's end, and turned, unable to leave their leader to face the enemy alone. The Balrog reached the bridge. Gandalf stood in the middle of the span, leaning on the staff in his left hand, but in his other hand Glamdring gleamed, cold and white. His enemy halted again, facing him, and the shadow about it reached out like 2 vast wings. That's why everyone thinks Balrogs have wings. It raised the whip, and the thongs whined and cracked. Fire came from its nostrils, but Gandalf stood firm. I have to turn the page. I really want to hold my props, but I have to turn the page. "You cannot pass," he said. The orc stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass." The Balrog made no answer. The fire in it seemed to die, but the darkness grew. It stepped forward slowly onto the bridge, and suddenly it drew itself up to a great height, and its wings were spread from wall to wall. But still Gandalf could be seen, glimmering in the gloom. He seemed small and altogether alone, gray and bent, like a wizened tree before the onset of a storm. All right, I got all my shit now. From out of the shadow, a red sword leaped flaming. Glamdring glittered white in answer. There was a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. The Balrog fell back, and its sword flew up in molten fragments. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then again stood still. "You cannot pass," he said. With a bound, the Balrog leaped full upon the bridge. Its whip whirled and hissed. "He cannot stand alone," cried Aragorn suddenly, and ran back along the bridge. "Elendil!" he shouted. "I am with you, Gandalf." "Gondor!" cried Boromir, and leaped after him. At that moment, Gandalf lifted his staff, and crying aloud, he smote the bridge before him. The staff broke asunder and fell from his hand. A blinding sheet of white flame sprang up. The bridge cracked. Right at the Balrog's feet it broke, and the stone upon which it stood crashed into the gulf, while the rest remained, poised, quivering like a tongue of rock thrust out into emptiness. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and its shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, it swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled about the wizard's knees, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone, and slid into the abyss. "Fly, you fools!" he cried, and was gone. Let me put these tools away as a matter of respect for my boy. Oh my god, it's so precarious. Get this fucking master sword out of my way. Okay, that's fine. Ron says great Gandalfing. I appreciate it, dude. Ian McKellen. Come to Bridge of Khazad-Dûm in the next 45 minutes if you want an ass kicking. The fires went out, and blank darkness fell. The company stood rooted with horror, staring into the pit. Even as Aragorn and Boromir came flying back, the rest of the bridge cracked and fell. With a cry, Aragorn roused them. "Come, I will lead you now," he called. "We must obey his last command. Follow me." They stumbled wildly up the great stairs beyond the door, Aragorn leading, Boromir at the rear. At the top was a wide, echoing passage. Along this they fled. Frodo heard Sam at his side, weeping, and then he found that he himself was weeping as he ran. Doom, 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 the drumbeats rolled behind, mournful now and slow. Doom. They ran on. The light grew before them. Great shafts pierced the roof. They ran swifter. They passed into a hall, bright with daylight from its high windows in the east. They fled across it. Through its huge broken doors they passed, and suddenly before them the great gates opened, an arch of blazing light. There was a guard of orcs crouching in the shadows behind the great doorposts towering on either side, but the gates were shattered and cast down. Aragorn smote to the ground the captain that stood in his path, and the rest fled in terror of his wrath. Runtime. The company swept past them and took no heed of them. Out of the gates they ran and sprang down the huge and age-worn steps, the threshold of Moria. Thus, at last, they came beyond hope under the sky and felt the wind on their faces. They did not halt until they were out of bowshot from the walls. Dimrill Dale lay about them. The shadow of the misty mountains lay upon it, but eastwards there was a golden light on the land. It was but 1 hour after noon. The sun was shining. The clouds were white and high. They looked back. Dark yawned the archway of the gates under the mountain shadow. Faint and far beneath the earth rolled the slow drum beats. Doom. A thin black smoke trailed out. Nothing else was to be seen. The dale all around was empty. Doom. Grief at last wholly overcame them, and they wept long, some standing and silent, some cast upon the ground. Doom. Doom. The drum beats faded. And that's the end of that chapter. Rest in peace to a real one. So, I really like how in this entire chapter, Tolkien's like writing style lends itself well to kind of like action sequences. Like he kind of keeps the pace moving. And again, uses a lot of like $100 words, which I really enjoy. But I would like to focus in. Glamdring was designed, from chat, Zephyr, what's up? Thank you for being here. Glamdring was designed for a 7-foot-tall elf lord Turgon. Yes, it was. Gandalf would have had to wield it with 2 hands. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I have a lady-size Glamdring so that I can hold it. But yeah, like, that's a 2-handed weapon, and he's got his staff in one and his greatsword in the other. Like, that's crazy. And he's already weak. Like, someone help this man. Oh my god. Poor Gandalf, honestly. He's like, I'm going through it, guys. I'm about to meet my match. Really quick, I just want to talk about the kind of description of the Balrog, of being a shadow wreathed in flame. His enemy halted again, facing him, and the shadow about it reached out like 2 vast wings. You'll notice here my sick-ass Benno art that I got from Rogue Print Co. Also, that's where the shirt's from. You already know what it is. You already been knowing about what it is. But yeah, in the movie, the Balrog has wings. In all the fan art from the movie, the Balrog has wings. In the text, they're like, it's like wings. May or may not actually be wings. It's not wings. But it does crack me up that it's like in there. So when people are like, maybe Balrogs do have wings actually. It's not a man-dragon. It's not like a demon. It's just a very powerful fire spirit, I suppose. If anyone knows more about Balrogs than I do, put it in the chat because I don't know shit about fuck. Oh, all right. So in the movie, in the Peter Jackson flick, Gandalf says, "You cannot pass. I am the servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. The dark fire shall not avail you, flame of Udun. You shall not pass." So, this is like, okay. I cannot remember what the thing was, but like a couple years ago, in the midst of like the huge Lord of the Rings fandom revival that happened during COVID, I saw like a post, it might have been like fan art or something, of Gandalf with the quote from the book that says, "You cannot pass." And a bunch of replies to this post of it like being fan art or a t-shirt or whatever is a bunch of fucking reply guys being like, actually, it's "you shall not pass." So, and it's like, no, buddy, it's not. It's "you cannot pass." In the movie, he says "you shall not pass." In the book, he says "you cannot pass," which speaks to this larger question of where the canon is that I'm constantly thinking about. As like, I will eventually talk about this in more detail, but like, I did read the Lord of the Rings books before I saw the movies, but only because my dad like gave them to me and I technically read them. I did not understand them. I was like 12. I was 11 or 12. Or 10 or 11. I don't know how time works. But I did technically read them, but like the movies are what gave me the kind of like vibe and feeling of the story and gave me an aesthetic for the thing. So I was like a movie first fan for a really long time. I did start reading Lord of the Rings pretty much annually after I turned like 16 and my reading comprehension improved. And now I'm a book first fan because the books are fucking crazy. Like, they're so good. And the movies are good too. I really like the movies, but when people take what happens in the movie as the canon and as like the definitive version of events, no, 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 no. It's a different story. Essentially, the characters are different, the story is different. The movies tell a similar but different story than the books do. So, to dig into this kind of cannot versus shall not, the meaning of these words is significant in this conversation. In that, like, in the movie, you shall not pass is essentially him being like, you're not going to pass. Like, maybe you thought you could, you're not going to be able to. But you cannot pass carries a different connotative meaning. When you say you cannot, you're saying you do not have the ability to can, right? Like, you're not allowed to pass me because I'm not going to allow you to pass. Like, you shall not pass has a different kind of like definitive finality about it. And I don't think that lends itself to what Gandalf is actually communicating here, which is, I'm a servant of the secret fire. The dark fire shall not avail you, and you cannot pass. I do think the way it goes in the book is better in a lot of contexts and conversations, but especially in this particular scene, him being like, it's not you shall not pass with that definitive finality as if there's a stop sign. It's you cannot pass because I'm saying so. Like, Gandalf is asserting his power here. What little of it he has left in his fucking tired, busted down, half a heart left state that he's in. So I've always found it important to kind of point out the difference between the two. And also, nothing gets me going like telling men on the internet that they might be wrong about something. I'm gonna be honest with you. All right, chat. Zephyr, Balrogs are not monsters with wings and tails. Exactly. They're closer, I envision from the book description, to like Shadow Gandalf, right? Mario has Wario, Luigi has Waluigi, Gandalf has Balrog, right? Just like a dark, shadowy version of him. James says the actual bridge breaking quote is "Rah!" Yeah, exactly. Zephyr again, Gandalf makes commands. He's not casting spells. You cannot pass. Your staff is broken. Exactly. So in this chapter as well, he says, I had to use a word of command, and command is capitalized. So if there's ever like a moment in the text where like magic is evident and making itself seen, it's in that scene of like, I had to use a word of command, and then also the you cannot pass lines that's Gandalf doing magic. Like, he talks about sealing the door with a shutting spell, a sealing spell, whatever he calls it. But the way that he's using his voice to command the Balrog and say, you cannot, not you shall not, you cannot, that is magic. Like, that's as close as we get to out and proud magic in Lord of the Rings, really. And I like that. I think it's a good thing. It's the same as when like hobbits basically disappear because you can't see or hear them if they don't want to be seen or heard, regardless of if there's a ring of power in the situation or not. That's also magic. Like, that's like the kind of like atmospheric environmental magic that I find so satisfying about Lord of the Rings, because it's not like fucking abracadabra, whatever. It's words of command. It's using your voice, it's using your presence, and it's using, your like professional skill developed over centuries of your tiny little race of little guys that you can kind of disappear and hide in plain sight kind of thing. All right, chat. Ron, Gandalf speaking some hard truths to the wingless fire demon. Exactly. It's giving Balrogs will literally stomp through a hall and take down a powerful Maya instead of going to therapy. Zephyr, the capitalized words like command and pity means it's divine power working. Exactly. That's the indicator there of like the divinity, again, of Middle Earth is part of the magic of the thing. Like, elves kind of have a sort of magic about them because they are divinely connected beings. Gandalf is a divinely connected being. He has magic. Gandalf does also communicate some of his divine learnings to Frodo and also to Bilbo in terms of pity and mercy, these things that were taught him by Nienna, the Vala. So all of this together, I think, makes for a lovely action-packed chapter where we learn so much about Gandalf in like 5 pages of like, he does have a finite amount of power and energy. And he will sacrifice himself for the good of the quest. And I want to say spoiler alert, but it's like, obviously it's devastating that he's gone. But I don't think there's a sense of finality in how Gandalf disappears from the text at this point. Whereas later in the text, we're going to see a couple different passages that have more finality to them that also do not result in a death. But oh boy, do they hint that they're going to. So it's a cliffhanger, and I enjoy hanging off a cliff for a moment, even if I'm scrabbling around in some rocks before I fall to my doom. But yeah, also the echoing drumbeats of doom following the fellowship out of the mines. Like even when they're outside, they can still hear the drums because the grief of the situation of like losing Gandalf is still hitting them in waves. I think that's very effective as well. So that is the Bridge of Khazad-Dûm, and some of my feelings about people who conflate the text and the film in the way that they tend to do. There's another video on like my channel about, I think it's called The Rant of the Rohirrim, and it's about people going on the internet and telling lies. So if you haven't seen that and you enjoy that sort of thing of like me being a detective for some kind of meaningless bullshit, but stuff that I find important and interesting, that's one for you. So I'll be back next week. We're going to get into Lothlorien next week. It's going to get mad weird with the elves and Lady Galadriel. And I'm also, as I said, so close to finishing this script so I can lay down the video and put it out about my fucking boy, Meriadoc Brandybuck. I'm fucking so excited about it. So thank you again for being here with me. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next week. I'll post on my channel and Instagram as I usually do about my stream ahead of time, so you'll know when it's coming. And yeah, in the meantime, you be good. Don't awaken anything in the deep, please. Like, don't delve too greedily. Oh, one more other thing. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I've been playing Return to Moria, whatever the new game is that came out, where like you can play as a dwarf and you like collect resources and you can build stuff and like you can mine for things. Like you're in Moria trying to like retake it again in the Fourth Age. And it's quite good. And part of the game mechanic is that like as a dwarf, whenever you come upon like a statue that's all busted up of like one of your kin, you fix the statue, and also like you can like pay honor to it by like kind of bowing your head, and like then you earn some like spirit points from it. And Gimli does that in this. Where when they're leaving Balin's tomb, Gimli's like, hang on a second, let me just get a little honor moment in here. So we've never had a good Lord of the Rings video game. I am very hesitant to say that Return to Moria is good. I'm playing it on a Steam Deck. It's very clumsy gameplay, but I am enjoying it. And I like that they took little things like that from the text and at least made an effort. So that's that on that. I'll be back next week. Y'all be good, and see you then. Have a good one, y'all.